Welcome back, friends and family. We're continuing our deep dive on Ernest from Earth, and we are looking at Chapter 8 of our curriculum guide. Our social emotional learning focus for this chapter is social awareness, as Ernest starts to get some indication of the social issues, the social structures of Targ that he's going to be experiencing in a more in-depth way. The first question on the curriculum guide is, what are DAT's parents' professions? Why might these professions be important to the story and its central themes? And how might DAT's parents' jobs impact DAT in his point of view? So, we already mentioned in the last chapter, DAT's mother is a teacher. It's revealed in this chapter that DAT's father is a lawyer. Dat gives a little insight into how that maybe impacts his life and his perspective. We've talked about the Sparrows always have people over at their house, people over for supper, people staying there in the spare bedroom or on the couch, people who need a place to stay. And part of that has to do with Mr. Sparrow and Mrs. Sparrow's jobs. Dad's mother, Mrs. Sparrow, she's a teacher. Teachers are often plugged into the community. They have a pretty good handle on who's struggling, what families are struggling with things, what children are struggling with things. And Dad's father has a similar perspective as a lawyer who has red skin, who works with other red individuals in the community who often cannot get legal representation from someone else. Dad also mentions that his father does a lot of work for free. He explains that his father is the first red individual who was licensed in the state to practice law. Basically, I wanted to give the clear indication, and I am borrowing a lot of things from other areas. Specifically, Dad's father being a lawyer, that's sort of a tip of the hat to Atticus Finch and To Kill a Mockingbird, and I kind of thought that would be an interesting thing if you switched it around, if the Atticus type character wasn't a white person defending a black man, but what if that character, who is this lawyer who understands the law and tries to use it for good, is one of those, is in this case part of the community that may be disenfranchised in some way, that he's kind of breaking down a barrier and trying to use that to help other people, and that comes with certain other challenges. But I wanted both of Dad's parents to be plugged into the community and to be in positions that can be, at their best, positions that are practicing civic engagement and trying to elevate the community and trying to empower other people. And I thought that was sort of central to who those characters are, and that may impact Dad's perspective about life a little bit. I know me being a teacher impacts the way that my children see the community, and they maybe get some more insight into struggles that certain people have, or they recognize sort of the importance for civic engagement and to be involved and to try to support other people and empower other people. So that may have an impact on the way Dad views the world. From my perspective, it does. And we're going to talk about social issues in this book. So giving Dad's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Sparrow, jobs that tie them closely into the social aspects of their community was important for me. Question number 2. Why are there frequently people over at Dad's house for supper? How might this situation impact Dad and his general point of view? Talked about this a little bit in the last chapter, but basically Dad's parents, they feel that need to help and support other. Dad describes it as his parents saying, "Oh, we have a lot of love left to give. We wanted to have this big family. We were very happy to have you, but they weren't able to have any more children, and they just want to continue to help and support other people. That's why people are often over for supper." As I said, that's based a lot on what I saw from my maternal grandparents bringing people into their house, and the idea of feeding people it's a way to share love and support. There's a lot of emotion that's connected to sharing a meal with someone, and that might impact Dad's point of view because he's around other people. He's around people who have fallen on hard times. He maybe gets a perspective that especially some people of his age maybe don't get. The third question: what does Ernest start to realize about the social status of red citizens on Targ? It starts to become clear to Ernest that there is some division. We had a loose reference to blue-skinned individuals, but it's becoming clear to Ernest that not everyone on Targ is red, and it seems that those with red skin are perhaps disenfranchised or face certain challenges because of the color of their skin. The next part of that question is, as Ernest considers the possible challenges facing Reds, he considers Earth's history and gets an ache in his stomach. Why do you think this is? I alluded to it with opening the book with the Martin Luther King Jr. speech. Ernest is aware, and I wanted to create that picture of this future Earth that maybe seems a little more utopian, that has maybe that at least in many ways has gotten past a lot of the things that have divided us in our history and continue to divide us as the human race. So Ernest, but I wanted to make sure that like Ernest was aware that it wasn't like an Earth that was forgetting its past. And that was part of starting with that little history lesson. Ernest is well aware of the ugly parts of Earth's past. And when he considers this new friend being part of what might be a disenfranchised community, or a community that faces some struggles due to just because of how they look, he's reflecting on the long, long history we have on Earth of hurting people, disenfranchising people because people look a certain way or believe a certain thing or come from a certain place. We have a long, storied, ugly history that continues to be complicated. And Ernest, as someone from the future, is looking back on all this, and he realizes, oh no, this might be something that my new friend is having to deal with that is unfair and is challenging. The next part of that question is, how might this indicate Ernest's character and the central themes of the story? So as far as central themes, clearly we're starting to get into the racial issues, the social issues a little bit. We keep kind of teasing around that, and it becomes a lot more straightforward pretty soon. What that might reveal about Ernest's character is, I hope we're starting to show that Ernest does care, even though he maybe has not experienced something like racism or social division in his life directly, he's going to be immersed in this a little bit, and it shows at least a desire or an ability for some level of empathy, that he kind of gets this ache in his stomach when he thinks about his newfound friend, and he thinks about the ugly history of Earth, and that gets to him. And I wanted that to be a part of the character, that like he has this inherent level of compassion, even if he, as we find, lacks a first-hand understanding. How might this serve as foreshadowing? I think pretty clearly we keep hinting around the issue of race and social issues. And then predict what will happen when Ernest meets Dad's parents. This is a pretty wide open thing. It's kind of fun just to have students, or if I'm even reading to my kids, just predict what do you think is going to happen next. What do you think is going to happen? Because at the end of this chapter, Dad's mom gives the whistle. That means it's time to come running. They get heading out, and I ended the chapter with Otis, the artificial intelligence, saying, I want to object once again, and Ernest is nervous, so he's looking at Dad, and he says, objection noted, but then he goes running off behind Dad, so we know it's about to start. Ernest is about to be thrown into this world in a real way. He's going to at least meet Dad's mom now. He's going to be put in this situation, and here's kind of where the story gains even more. We kind of had the inciting incident of boom, there's the crash, and Ernest winds up on Targ. We've got this kind of slow teasing around of what's going to happen. Now it starts to, the rising action starts to escalate a little more quickly over the next several chapters. So we'll continue going through the curriculum guide and the different chapters. Thank you so much for joining me and spending some of your valuable time looking at the book and going over some of the curriculum stuff. Much love.